What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. Now, we talked about my 10 greatest black heavyweights of all times. We discussed my 10 greatest black light heavyweights of all times. In a previous video, I talked to you about Theodore Tiger Flowers. And I've been thinking, what I'm going to do now, in this one video, I'm going to recite to you the remainder 9. But I'll do it in conversation. Because let's face it, let's be frank about this. The black middleweights in history has always dominated the era. But I'll tell you where the problem was. They were either not given opportunities, either to train properly, the opponents that they needed to fight in order to get in that position. And when they got there, they had to take dives. They were handcuffed. Do you know that a lot of black fighters that sparred, chicken wire was placed in their mouth guard in such a way where they didn't quite realize it until they got hit, and they would bleed profusely. And they would no longer be able to fight in a specific fight, if it was a world championship fight or a ranking position. Do you know that at the last minute, some of these men were told, this is not your night tonight? That didn't happen in all races, creed, but black fighters specifically. When you look at the records and look at them good, and you see that this man defeated a fighter 3 times, and he lost to him when he should have defeated him, when it mattered most, as did Charlie Burley and Georgie Abrams. That was a draw. That was not a draw. Fritzy Zivic and Charlie Burley in 1938. Zivic won the fight in Pittsburgh, and Charlie Burley defeated him in 38 and 39 after their first fight. That was not a victory for Fritzy Zivic. This is what actually happened to a lot of these fighters. And they were held back. They're not given the opportunities they so justly deserve. This happened in the middleweight division, specifically. Now, Holman Williams, he was named Black Dynamite, member of Black Murderers Row. He was a colored welterweight and colored middleweight champion. He was born January 30th, 1915 in Pensacola, Florida. He died July 5th, 1967 in Akron, Ohio. He stood 5'10.5", weighed 147 to 157.5 pounds. He was managed by Jock Roxborough and Julian Black. He had a fighting career record of 187 total bouts, 145 wins, 35 knockouts, 30 losses, and he was stopped 3 times in his career. He had 110 wins by decision. He was in the ring with fighters such as Eddie Booker, who was the California middleweight champion of Black Murderers Row. Member Archie Moore. Jack Chase, who was a California middleweight champion and California light heavyweight champion. Jack Chase took the title away from Watson Jones in the light heavyweight division, and he took the middleweight championship title from Eddie Booker, California State middleweight championship title. He was in the ring with Charlie Burley 7 times. Charlie Burley was the colored welterweight and colored middleweight champions. Charlie Burley took his colored welterweight championship title in 1938 from Coco Kid, and his colored middleweight championship title in 1942 from Holman Williams. He was in the ring with Herbert Lewis Hardwick 14 times. Coco Kid would defeat Holman Williams 9 times out of the 14. Williams was in the ring with Lloyd Marshall, who would hold the Duration Light Heavyweight Championship title. Burt Lytell, Archie Moore, Marcel Sedan, Little Tiger Aaron Wade, Jose Basora, Jake LaMotta, Gene Buffalo, Paul Lewis, Steve Belois. that was Holman Williams. So he's on this list, as is William Gorilla Jones. Now, as we take a look at William Gorilla Jones, and we realize that he defeated Ozone Piazza for that title. Mickey Walker had relinquished his title because he was mandated to face one of these black fighters. You had Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt, William Gorilla Jones. You had a fighter by the name of Len Johnson. He fought out of Europe. And he was blackballed. No pun intended. He was told that he couldn't fight because he didn't fit the description, if you will. He was well qualified, but there was a rule. And that rule was if you didn't look like the established fighters during that time, you couldn't fight for a world title. In other words, if you looked like Len Johnson, you couldn't fight for a world title. And Len Johnson had to go over to Australia to win the Empire Middleweight Championship title. And he was told by Mickey Walker, if you face Tommy Milliken, you'll get a shot. Walker knew that Len Johnson could not possibly fight Tommy Milliken. He also knew that Len Johnson would never be awarded an opportunity to fight him because of the color of his skin. This is what Len Johnson had to deal with. William Gorilla Jones would finally become the middleweight champion of the world when he would defeat a fighter, as I said to you. His name was Ozone Piazza, but he would lose his title to Marcel Theo. He lost to him June 11th, 1932. And it's unfortunate because they disqualified William Gorilla Jones. Theo stated that he was hit with a low blow. And that wasn't the first time he complained about that. He complained about that before. So this is the problem that you have. But William Gorilla Jones was an outstanding fighter. He is on this list. Now, you're now looking at Harry Smith, the Harlem Thunderbolt. He was born October 28, 1907 in Kingston, Jamaica. He died September 19, 1933 in Chicago, Illinois. He stood 6'1", weighed 155 to 175 and 3/4 pounds. He was managed by Dave Brown. And he was, well, I wouldn't say promised, but there was an offer made out of the Harry Smith camp to pay Mickey Walker several thousands of dollars for a title shot. And Mickey Walker and Jack Kearns turned it down. There was almost an agreement there. You see, Harry Smith, who faced Powell Silvers, he faced Charlie Ballinger, he faced Yao Ukum, he faced Homer Robinson, who was known as the Black Ghost, Maxie Rosenblum avoided Harry Smith. And it's just unfortunate because Harry Smith was well deserving of a title shot opportunity. He was 65-0 with 50 knockouts as an amateur. He could punch. And that's where his problem was. He was very intelligent. So much so that his father wanted him to become a dentist. He wanted to be a prize fighter. So he would challenge Jack McVeigh, the Pride of Harlem, 29, that fight would come off. It was at the Athletic Club. Harry Smith would become the colored middleweight champion in 1929. Harry Smith is on this list. So we have Theodore Tiger Flowers, William Gorilla Jones. We have Harry Smith. We have Holman Williams. The next fight I want to talk about that's on this list is Charlie Burley. He's well deserving to be on this list. What a fighter he was. Now, the thing is, July 29th, 1940, Charlie Burley would draw 10 rounds with Georgie Abrams in Millville, Pennsylvania. And this is where Charlie Burley really began having problems, because there's no way he drew with Georgie Abrams. Now, Georgie Abrams was a phenomenal fighter, but he didn't defeat or have a draw with Charlie Burley. August 12, 1940, Coco Kid would lose to Georgie Abrams, 10 rounds. Washington, D.C. And it was recognition of the NBA Maryland World Welterweight Championship title. Well, this would now place Georgie Abrams in line to face Tony Zale. That would have placed Charlie Burley or Coco Kid in that position. September 3rd, 1940, Charlie Burley would win 10 rounds over Jimmy Bivens in Melville, Pennsylvania. September 4th, 1940, Holman Williams would lose 10 rounds to Izzy Genazzo in Washington, D.C. Ray Robinson would then begin his professional debut October 4th, 1940. He was only undercard of Henry Armstrong, but he would lose 15 rounds to Fritzy Zivic in New York's Madison Square Garden. October 14th, 1940, Izzy Genazzo would win 15 rounds over Coco Kid and Maryland for the World Welterweight Championship crown of Baltimore. October 21st, 1940, Lloyd Marshall would lose 10 rounds to Teddy Urath in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I want you to pay attention to what's happening. January 17th, 1941, Henry Armstrong would lose to Fritzy Zivic in 12 rounds. New York's Madison Square Garden. It was for the World Welterweight Championship crown. February 7th, 1941, Lloyd Marshall would lose 10 rounds to Shorty Hughes in Sacramento, California. June 2nd, 1941, Charlie Burley, 9th round knockout over Ozzie Bulldog Harris. June 9th, 1941, Ezra Charles would lose 10 rounds to Ken Overland, Cincinnati, Ohio. Do you see what's beginning to happen here? All of these great black fighters, middleweights and future light heavyweights, started losing all their fights. And this happened between 40 and 41. June 9th, 1941, Ezra Charles would lose 10 rounds to Ken Overland. On that card, June 9th, you had Curtis the Hatcherman Shepard. He defeated Lee Q. Murray in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. June 8th, 1941, Joe Louis knocks out Billy Conn in 13 rounds. July 2nd, 1941, Jimmy Bivens would win in 10 rounds in Melville, Pennsylvania over Curtis the Hatcherman Shepard. July 14th, 1941, Jimmy Bivens would lose 9 rounds to Lem Franklin, out of Chicago. July 14th, Charlie Burley would win by knockout in the 5th round over Young Gene Buffalo. July 17th, 1941, Henry Armstrong would win by technical knockout in the 6th round over Lou Jenkins in New York's Madison Square Garden. July 21st, 1941, Ray Robinson would defeat in 10 rounds Sammy Engot in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. August 25th, 1941, Charlie Burley would defeat Otto Blackwell in 10 rounds in Melville, Pennsylvania. September 19th, 1941, Ray Robinson knocks out Maxie Shapiro in 3 rounds in New York. September 25th, 1941, Ray Robinson would defeat Marty Servo in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. October 31st, 1941, Ray Robinson would defeat Fizzy Zivik in New York's Madison Square Garden, unanimous decision. January 7th, 1943, Jimmy Bivens would defeat Ezzard Charles in Cleveland, Ohio, defeated him in 10 rounds. January 4th, 1943, Willie Joyce would lose 15 rounds to Luther Slugger White and Maryland for the World Lightweight Championship crown, recognized by Baltimore. January 11th, 1943, Jack Chase would defeat in 15 rounds Eddie Booker for the California Middleweight Championship crown. January 15th, 1943, Holman Williams would lose 12 rounds to Coco Kid in New Orleans. And that would be for the colored middleweight championship title that he would win from Charlie Burley. February 26, 1943, Jimmy Bivens would win 10 rounds over Anton Christopheridis. March 2nd, 1943, Henry Armstrong would lose 10 rounds to Willie Joyce, Los Angeles, California. April 3rd, 1943, Charlie Burley would defeat Aaron Tiger Wade. He defeated him in 10 rounds, Oakland, California. April 19th, 1943, Charlie Burley will have a 10-round draw with Coco Kid, New Orleans. I can go on and on and on with the Charlie Burley. But Charlie Burley was not treated fairly as well. He is on this list because Charlie Burley was a hell of a fighter. It's just the problem is, since these fighters didn't get title shots, whether they won or lost, they're not ranked with some of the greats. And that's the problem. And that's the way it was during that time. But Charlie Burley and Holman Williams, Ezzard Charles, Archie Moore, these are all great middleweights during their day. So I'm placing Ezzard Charles, since I'm talking about him, Charlie Burley, Holman Williams, William Gorilla Jones, Harlem Thunderbolt, Harry Smith, Theodore Tiger Flowers, greatest black middleweights of all times. I also have to add on James Lights Out Toney. What a puncher he was. James Toney had magnificent defense. He was as dramatic as you can possibly become. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He is on this list. He was a magnificent fighter. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. The great Sugar Ray Robinson is on this list. Great black middleweights of all times. Now, you had Emil Griffith. You had Reuben Hurricane Carter. You had Georgie Benton. You had a fighter by the name of Blackwood. Another good one. You had Alan Faulkner. You had Charlie Green. Cleo Shane. I mean, you had some great, great fighters. Sam Langford was a phenomenal black middleweight. He was a colored black middleweight champion, also the European middleweight champion. But it's hard to put these gentlemen in perspective because, I mean, if you look at Marvin Hagler, the fact that he had to go overseas to win his title, and he had everything but the kitchen sink thrown at him. But Marvin Hagler's on this list, who's a dominating middleweight champion. So when you look at Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard, they passed through the middleweight division. Thomas Hearns would win the NABF middleweight championship title. I remember when he knocked out Black and Gold James Schuler. Hit him with a one-piece. It was on the undercard of Marvin Hagler and John the Beast Mugabe. And he dropped a right hand on James Schuler that put him out, completely out. And earlier in that fight, Gaby Canizales faced a fighter by the name of Richard Sandoval. Richard Sandoval took his title from Jeff Chandler out of Philadelphia. Well, Gaby Canizales had knocked out Richard Sandoval to the point where he had to go to the hospital. And when Hearns knocked out Schuler, everyone thought he had to go to the hospital. It was pouring raining outside, and you had to wear ponchos they were selling, but it was cold. And then Ray Leonard wanted to fight Hagler because he saw that Hagler couldn't move side to side. But you would have Julian the Hawk Jackson, Mike the Body Snatcher McCallum, Roy Jones, Bernard the Executioner Hopkins. Hopkins is on my list. So those are the top 10. Bernard Hopkins, Charlie Burley, Holman Williams, William Gorilla Jones, Harry Smith, the Georgia Deacon, Theo the Tiger Flowers. I'm just tallying them up now. James Lights Out Tony, Sam Langford, Emil Griffith, Ezard Charles, these are great black middleweights historically, and you had hundreds more. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters would never be forgotten on my channel. Yeah, James Toney was something else. He admired Ezard Charles. He and Bill Miller have practiced Ezard Charles moves, watching those videotapes over and over again. And he credits Ezard Charles for a lot of his success. James Toney was an outstanding fighter. Bernard the Executioner Hopkins dominated the middleweight division in his reign. He was a magnificent fighter. So I just want to thank you for following me on the middleweight division, the 10 greatest black middleweights of all times. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Sugar Ray Robinson is on this list as well. And if it's more than 10, Sugar Ray Robinson is on this list. He was a 5-time middleweight champion. His ability to throw punches in combination, set you up, get you out of there, at the end of his left hook, was a thing to behold. A phenomenal fighter was Sugar Ray Robinson. Thanks for watching. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights, all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for watching. Peace.